Good morning. Today on Spotlight, reaction to the Ebony magazine campaign of prominent African-American leaders on behalf of former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, and the fight for justice of black farmers who legal experts say lost their land unfairly. Pontiac minister Kean Payton of New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church and attorney Phyllis Craig Taylor, professor and former dean of the North Carolina Central University Law School, will join me. And later on our Sunday morning program, meet attorney Jeffrey G. Nutt, Republican candidate for Oakland County Executive. It's Sunday, July the 12th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Last week, through Ebony magazine, you held a press conference. Many distinguished individuals attended that press conference via Zoom. You dealt with two topics. Let's take the first one first. Kwame Kilpatrick, the former mayor of this city, you're urging the president to be able to do something to help him get out of jail early and not fill out the entirety of his sentence. What's been the reaction since you've held that press conference?
There's been mixed reaction. For those who know the history of the struggle of African Americans in this country, particularly feel strongly about the need for criminal justice reform, they welcome the press conference that was held on last Friday with the coalition of clergy that we were able to build around the issue, not necessarily to dispute the guilt or innocence of the former mayor, but rather we understand that there is a terrible legacy in history here in the United States where African Americans disproportionately receive more excessive sentences than their non-white counterparts with similar charges. I would further suggest that for public relations or public corruption crimes where no life has been taken, 28 consecutive years is far too long.
You mentioned before we started that the White House has reached out to you since that press conference. Can you fill us in a little bit on that?
It is our understanding that the White House did communicate with one of our panelists who was sharing. Several of our guests are regularly in communications with the White House. And in fact, we're waiting to hear back today from some developments that we anticipate were held at the White House this week.
In terms of Kwame Kilpatrick, and you're a legal scholar, is this sentence that he got, is it too harsh for the crime that he committed?
I would say yes, and that's my opinion. Judges have a lot of discretion in determining what sentences are going to be. But when we compare his sentence to the sentence of others who have committed so many violent crimes, and it could be from one violent crime that led to a death or even a series of violent crimes, the length of his sentence stands out. And it appears to be something more than what we would believe would be a fair punishment for his crimes. But when you look at the sentence in its totality and compare it to other sentences, his seems to be way off the top of the scale.
I've heard a lot of people say, yeah, the sentence is too long, but you know what? He hasn't shown enough public remorse or any real public remorse or any apology that seems so sincere. And so we're not sure that he has really even learned anything in these 7 years.
And I think that that's focusing on the wrong issue, because now we are focusing on what he has done after the sentence. And I think really the focus needs to be on the criminal justice system and what reforms we need that would prevent this type of sentence from being handed down in the first place. So I think we have to be very careful about victim blaming. And he did not give himself this sentence. So it is not up to his actions now to somehow result in a reduction of the sentence.
When we come back, we'll focus our attention on the topic that I know is near and dear to both of your hearts and also something that you're trying to champion, and that is the number of African American farmers that have lost their land across this country. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Professor Craig Taylor, Your father brought land during Jim Crow years, something that I'm sure had to be extremely difficult. And I think I read somewhere that you said he had emotional intelligence. What did that mean, and how was he able to accomplish that during those difficult times?
But my father was a sharecropper, and he spent a lot of time analyzing the landowner. And over time, he figured out a process by which he could relate to him in a subservient manner, but still ask for what he needed. So when he married my mother, he told him that my mother's father was a landed African American and that he was not going to approve of this wedding if he could not say that he owned at least 1 or 2 acres of land. So he tugged on his heartstrings and he went to a place that he thought the conversation would be productive. And he then allowed him to purchase the first 2 acres, which is still where our home is today.
What percentage of African Americans who own land have lost that land, say, just within the last decade or so?
You know, that's a difficult number because what we haven't done is we haven't looked at this across the board. We are focusing right now on Black farmers, but we've had African Americans who have been stripped of their equity and who have lost land through judicial partition of heirs' property, where developers came in and bought the land using, again, a legal process. We've had the number of foreclosures, and that hit African Americans extremely hard, especially first-time home buyers. And in addition to that, layered on top of the rest of that is all of the African American farmers who have never received the same programs from the USDA and the support that they needed to be successful.
About 2,500 African American farmers, Black farmers, won a class action lawsuit. What's the status of those? Because I understand that while they won it, they have yet to be paid. Is that correct? And what is it you would like from the Trump administration on this?
Yes. Now, our estimate on that is probably approximately 4.8% of that group of African American farmers actually received payments from that settlement of the Pickford lawsuit, and that was against the United States Department of Agriculture. And what the lawsuit alleged was discrimination in the access that the farmers had to all of the farm support programs, in addition to lending programs. A good example is they would delay the process of looking at the African American farmer's application. And if you know anything at all about agriculture, you know timing is everything. You have to plant at a certain time if you're going to have a harvest. And they would delay the application so that the farmers would not have the resources they need for seed, equipment, fertilizer, and then they are late into the system. So that's just one example of the egregious acts that were going on at the United States Department of Agriculture. In the settlement of that lawsuit, 2 tracks were put in place, a track A and a track B. Track A, you could receive $50,000, and that's if you did not have computerized records where you could demonstrate all of your loss of income. And then track B, where you could get your actual damages. Well, so many of the farmers did not have that. They are smaller farmers and they don't have an office manager and an accountant on staff. So they were not able to produce that documentation. And most of us contested that at the moment because we thought it was designed to deny them the recovery that had been earned in the Pickford lawsuit.
Why was this a particular topic of importance to you and Ebony? And based upon what you've just heard from the professor, do you believe that, one, the settlement was a fair settlement, and 2, what would you like the Trump administration to do about this?
Absolutely. So again, I want to thank Dr. or Attorney Phyllis Craig Taylor and also Attorney Tracy McCurdy, who is the Executive Director for the Black Belt Center of Justice, for bringing this very critical issue to our attention. Certainly, the issue of justice in America has no partisanship. And so whether it is Republicans or Democrats or whatever the issue, we feel that this is an issue that should be of significant importance for everyone. Certainly the dispossession of land that Attorney Phyllis Craig Taylor just mentioned has been a practice in this nation for a number of years. And so with respect to the fact that you have these Black farmers who are currently in serious threat of losing more than 1.5 million acres of land, that's an issue of justice for Ebony. And Ebony, it has always been our position to highlight systemic injustices that have occurred against Black and brown people in this country for the last 75 years. In addition to having us reaching out to the Trump administration, Attorney Phyllis Craig Taylor and I and other representatives have already had conversations with Senator Debbie Stabenow, who is a member of the Agricultural Committee, to bring this attention to her awareness. And we're also reaching out currently to several members of the Congressional Black Caucus to educate them, to make them aware, and hopefully get them to champion this cause as well.
Sure. Attorney Craig Taylor, I'll give you the last word on this. You come from an activist background. When I read your history, you remember the Klan burning crosses on your front lawn, people who shot at your home. Your mother was an activist. You played a key role in integration and education at the University of Alabama and other places. When you look at this issue and look at all that is happening in America today, why do you believe America is having such a tough time today in 2020 coming to grips with the issue of race in America?
I think when you haven't had the hard conversations that we needed to have, what we've done is Band-Aids, and we've covered up scars, we've covered up wounds that never heal. And until you actually, I hate to say it this way, but rip the Band-Aid off and look at the true injury and then address it as a country, we look at the wealth of our nation and we understand that so much of that wealth was built on the backs of people who did not receive 1 cent for their labor. To follow that with Jim Crow, massive discrimination in every area, employment, housing, it doesn't matter where you look. And then to say, well, you know, we've addressed it because we passed the Civil Rights Act, we've passed the Voting Rights Act, and you can now go to school wherever you like and you can eat wherever you like. But what we take away from that conversation is that this is something that America feels that it has finished when only we have started. We've not even reached a middle point if where we need to be to fully recognize the harm that has been done to African Americans and other racial minorities in this country. And I want to join Reverend Payton in thanking the folks who have been on the front line, keeping these issues at the forefront. He mentioned Attorney Tracy McCurdy and the Black Belt Justice Center. She's dedicated her life to this work. And I want to also express that appreciation to her. I'm a member of the Land Loss Prevention Project Board here in North Carolina, where another group dedicated their lives, and many other Black farmer associations. So there are a lot of people who've been trying to get this as a headline issue. And I want to join Reverend Payton in saying that I think that it has to be a plank in the platform, whether it's the Democratic nominee or whether it's the Republican nominee, that if they want to truly address what is happening in our nation, then they have to talk about it publicly and they have to include reforms, and we have to have some commitment from them that we can hold them accountable for post-election for how they are going to address these issues.
Attorney Phyllis Craig Taylor from North Carolina, thank you so much for joining us. I wish we had more time. We will get you back. I promise we'll invite you, and hopefully you'll say yes, and we'll be able to expound upon this and other issues affecting this country. And Reverend Payton from Pontiac, thank you so much for joining us. And both of you stay safe.
Thank you, Chuck.
And coming up, we'll talk to the Republican candidate for Oakland County Executive, Attorney Jeffrey Nutt. Stay with us on Spotlight. You have a long and illustrious legal background. You're a Fulbright scholar. You've practiced your profession all over the world. But now you're deciding to jump into this political world. Why in the world, at this stage of your career, would you want to become Oakland County Executive?
Well, Chuck, it's because of great love for Oakland County and because of the great suffering in Oakland County that we've seen in 2020, that I decided that this was the time for us to join this race. This is not the time for a career politician to be county executive in Oakland County. No, I've been very fortunate, as you say, worked in a wonderful area of professional known as law. Equal access to justice matters to me. I'm fighting for every individual, every youth, every senior, every worker, every community, Chuck, to be a voice for the unheard.
You're faced off against Mike Kowal, who is Republican. You've got to get past him first before you get to that general. He has a long career in politics. Are you referencing him and saying that he's been at the public toll too long, too much of an elected representative, and you need someone from the outside?
That my opponent in the Republican race is not the person to lead the county. I did not raise the gas tax 7 times. I did not vote in favor of Proposition 1 in 2015 to raise taxes by hundreds of millions of dollars, spending the first $800 million to benefit special interests. I did not vote to increase the car registration fee by $20 on your birthday every year. I call that the birthday tax. Chuck, we have to free people up and liberate the oppression of government overreach. And not only that, to help people increase their access to the right to best possible health care, best possible education, the best possible jobs, and the best possible economy, which just until a few months ago was the best economy this nation had ever had with regard to transit.
All right, Attorney, let me interrupt you for just a second. I need to get to a break, and when we come right back, I'll let you pick up on the conversation that we have going at this particular time. We'll be right back with Attorney Jeffrey Nutt. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Jeffrey Nutt, Republican, running for Oakland County Executive. Attorney Nutt, you referenced COVID-19, which has changed the world and changed the landscape for everyone in just the last few months. It has also wreaked havoc with the Oakland County budget. You criticized your opponent for raising all kinds of taxes and voting for all types of tax increases. How will you get this county back on its feet? And are there any taxes that you would increase if it meant getting Oakland County back to the economic status that it was up under Oakland County Executive L. Brooks Patterson?
L. Patterson, he laid the foundation for a great, prosperous, and stable county government. We're going to continue that financial management operational success that he built upon. He never increased taxes to be able to do what he did. And what he did was provide stable service even in the midst of difficult times through this 3-year budgeting process. The AAA bond rating, that will continue. This difficult time that is something that requires thinking outside the box.
Attorney Nutt, L. Brooks Patterson, many people would say, was a career politician. You have now criticized career politicians. Had he still been with us and were running for office again, would you have challenged him on the basis that he was a career politician here in Oakland County?
I'd like to just say that when Brooks was running, the first time he was not a career politician. He was a conservative Republican advocate for justice, and that's what I am, a state bar champion of justice. I'm fighting to bring Oakland County back. And as much as I admire the long tenure and service of others in elected office, now is not the time for us to have a career politician as county exec.
Do you support a better regional transit system for Southeast Michigan?
Absolutely. In fact, what we need to do is we need to first fix our roads, which need desperate repairs and improvements in our bridges. And what I would do is I would draw down with a simple state law reform more than $100 million in funding through this simple law reform with a new entity that would be created that would have no new taxing power, that would allow us to recapture more than $100 million in funds that we've paid in taxes to the federal government, which has gone to benefit the transit in municipalities in other states over many, many years. This is something I will change. We will fix that. It is not something that takes a rocket scientist to fix. We will do that.
Attorney Jeffrey G. Nutt, thank you so much for joining us today on Spotlight. Republican candidate for Oakland County Executive. That completes all of our one-on-one. I'm sorry.
I would like to just say, visit jeffnutt.com, JEFFNUTT.com for the latest.
Very good. All right.
Health and security for all. Thank you, Chuck.
No problem. Thank you for joining us, and they are certainly welcome and encouraged to go to your website to find out more about the candidate. That completes all of our one-on-one interviews with the candidates for Oakland County Executive, Dave Coulter, Andy Meisner, Mike Kowal, and Jeffrey Nutt. On Tuesday, August the 4th, you, the people, get to decide who will win. You can see all of those interviews on WXYZ.com. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.